find positions that challenge you, where you can learn and grow from them. And, hopefully you can find people who will support you. When you have people who will invest in you for whatever reason, that makes a huge difference. And if you have those goals, if it's, I want to be CEO of this company, it's going to be really hard to get there if you don't have supporters who are pulling you up and pushing you from behind and, for all different directions.
Welcome to the Break Free podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. This podcast is dedicated to interview brilliant minds, business owners, CEOs that are changing the world for a better place. And what a beautiful example with our guest today, David Colby. Brother, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, David. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful, thanks. Just for the audience, if you don't know what Colby is, well, it's David's last name, but it's more than that. It's a psychological profile that has dramatically changed my life and the life of my employees. And I am so excited to interview David and go deep into what Colby is, how it came about, and how it's helping amazingly in the business world. So David, can you just tell me your full name, where do you live, and a bit about you?
Sure. So David Colby, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up here, spent some time on the East Coast of the United States for a while, and then came back here later on. So that's where I am now. Let's see, a little bit more about myself. Educated, got a business degree, worked on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. for a while, then became a lawyer, worked in a private law firm in Phoenix, and then got recruited to where I am today, Colby Corp. So it seems strange, like, well, you were recruited, but it's called Colby Corp. My mom actually started the company 47 years ago. She recruited me 25 years ago to come into the company for the first time, kind of as a grown-up. When you grow up in a company, you're doing stuff whether you want to be or not. So I was working in the business as a kid, but 25 years now as an adult, started as general counsel, became president, now CEO and visionary of Colby Corp.
That's an incredible move, especially coming from the law background, right? So how did you become a lawyer? Like what enticed you to actually go into that side of business?
I don't really know. It was always one of those things, though. I knew from the time I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer. No lawyers in the family. If anything, kind of a healthy distrust of lawyers that, lots of people have. So, no one was pushing me to do it, but it just seemed like of interest, the whole concept of pursuing justice and just almost the intellectual process of understanding the law, applying it, that intrigued me and interested me. So, I took some time in between undergraduate and law school and did other work, but and frankly, I did that because I thought to myself, well, just because you wanted to be a lawyer when you were a little kid, you should really think about this as an adult and not just do it because, okay, you were 8 and you thought it was cool because, I don't know, a TV show or whatever. So I took a little time, but then realized, yeah, I really did want to do it.
That's amazing. And what happened after you graduated? Who do you work for? Did you get your own firm or you got a job?
So one of my professors in law school was the founding partner of a firm here in Arizona, kind of a medium-sized private firm. He, when I was a law student, asked me to do a summer clerkship with the firm. Then they hired me, and I was basically a baby lawyer for them for 3 years, focusing on commercial litigation and land use law. So did that. It was really interesting work. Unlike a lot of former lawyers, well, number one, I only did it for 3 years, so that probably wasn't long enough to get burned out. I really enjoyed practicing law. It was interesting work. You get to meet all kinds of people. You learn different things because, especially at where I was in my career, I was doing different kinds of work. It wasn't just one thing all the time. So I really liked it, but, and maybe I'm getting ahead of your next question, like what brought me over. As I said, my mom recruited me, and, that was not necessarily difficult for her, but I had never envisioned myself working in her company. It wasn't really the family business. It was her business, and there was no other family working in it. That was not where I saw myself necessarily, but she wanted me to help come in, run the business. We had a lot of legal stuff going on. We had some intellectual property lawsuits that we had to deal with, and then just also legal stuff that, small businesses need to do day in and day out, contracts and other stuff like that. So actually, it's funny thinking about this now, because I saw one of my, actually the guy I mentioned before, the professor, founder of the law firm that brought me into the law firm. So he was really my first career mentor, maybe second, because my boss at my first job also, but ran into him over the weekend and was recounting the story of how, as successful a lawyer as he is, he kind of pointed me in the direction of maybe a career in law isn't what you want. And it wasn't a matter of, oh, David, you're not good at it, let me talk you out of this. It was just, what kind of life does it provide for you? And is that what you want to do? Having somebody else be your boss all the time. So I was kind of ripe for being recruited in that sense. But
and as an entrepreneur and who has family working with us, it's so fulfilling to have a family member come into the business, because you get automatic trust. You know that you're going to perform because it's the same time you want to make sure that that person wants to be in the business, because it was somebody else's baby, if you will, right?
Right.
So it must have been hard for you to make that decision. What prompted you to actually say yes?
I think it was a couple things. I would still get to do legal type work, so that was attractive. It wasn't just giving up my legal expertise to the extent I had some at that point early in my career, and I still was interested in that. So that was part of it. Also, it was 1998, and the internet. Colby Corp was a burgeoning internet company. We had gone online for the first time the year before, so started selling what we do directly to clients online, and also we're kind of had the prospect of putting our software that we've developed and we license to our business clients. We're going to be putting that online. So, in that era of the kind of before the .com bubble, but when it was really early, that was also really enticing to get to be involved in that.
Beautiful. That was a critical decision, because you were a lawyer. You've been trained in the professional in a professional law firm, and you were already making progress there. So what was in your mind when you decided to go back and get involved into the family business?
I think the reason I was ready to go was it was a really interesting opportunity. First of all, I could still be doing work with the legal stuff that I had learned. So the intellectual property law work that needed to be done in the business, the other general business law things that come up for a small business. And then also the company was moving into being really active on the internet. So we had just started selling our stuff directly online to consumers. We were planning to redesign our software that we licensed to corporate users, and we were going to put that online as a subscription model. And that was really interesting in 1998 to be able to step in and be a big part of making that happen. So as much as I enjoyed being a lawyer and really enjoyed the people I worked with, it just seemed like a really great opportunity.
That's great. And you still you applied some of your skills in the family business though, right? Because they must have had needed legal counsel too, right?
Yeah, although as I say, I right when I moved over, there was more, because there was intellectual property litigation that had been going on and was just kind of wrapping up. But as I tell people all the time, if I use my law degree very much in a small business, that's not a good day for a small business. I mean, unless it's a giant contract where somebody wants to buy a lot of our stuff, Yeah, spending time on legal things generally means you're wasting money, not making money. And I shouldn't say wasting, it has to get done or I wouldn't do it,
Right.
but it's not generally productive. So I still do some of that stuff, but and it helps me work with lawyers like when we need to, because I'm not an expert. I'm technically still a lawyer. I'm a member of the bar, but nobody should hire me. But I can at least manage that function a little bit at a high level because of that experience.
That's beautiful. Now let's get into what I really want to talk about, Colby itself. So can you
Yes.
describe what Colby is and how it's adding massive value to the marketplace?
So first of all, as a company, we exist because we have a mission. We want to help people understand their conative strengths. It's something that's instinctive. You're born with it. It doesn't change over time. You don't have to work to get better at it. It's just a part of who you are. And it's about the way you take action. And everybody has their own style. I mean, that's too soft a word really, but they have their own instinctive drive for the way they do things. And when you learn that about yourself, it can really unlock your productivity. You can do the things that you've been doing, but you do them in a more efficient way because it's doing it in a way that works for you, for who you are, rather than fighting against it or trying to become what somebody taught you was the right way to be. It's like you can get into that flow state so much more easily. So what Colby is really helping people understand that and then applying that to the things they care about.
That's wonderful. So as you see in your name, you have an 8273.
Yep.
I am 7662. Can you describe that what that is?
Sure. I'll start. So for the audience that doesn't know what the heck we're talking about, the Colby A index is the assessment that my mother actually developed. That's kind of the foundation for what Colby Corp does. And it identifies 4 action modes. So 4 areas of your instinctive strengths where you have a particular strength. You have a particular way of doing something. And so those numbers are always in the same order. So that's 7 for you, 8 for me. So they're very close. That's in the fact finder. It's about how we gather and share information. So people at our end of the spectrum toward the 10, it's scored 1 through 10. And by the way, not better or worse. 10's not better, 1's not worse. It's just kind of where you are. On our end of the spectrum, it's all about getting more information and detail, facts, becoming an expert, really digging deep and stuff. At the other end of the spectrum, it's not focusing on lots of individual detail, but focusing on the big picture. It's looking at the whole forest rather than a bunch of individual trees. So it's about simplifying. The second one, so for you a 6, for me a 2 is about follow through, which is about how we deal with systems, structure, organization. So we'll do it the same order kind of each time toward the 10 side of that scale, which you're a little bit toward, but you're more in the middle. That's about creating systems and structure and living within them when they are there. But even more than just living within them, it's really, if you step into a chaotic situation and you're what we would call an initiating fact finder, like follow through, maybe a 9 in follow through, you step into that chaos and you put order to it. You see patterns, you come up with schedules and flow charts. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who's very open-ended and adaptable. If there's a 14-point flow chart and system that you're supposed to follow, you might come up with a shortcut and say, oh, I think I can skip these 5 steps and get to the result quicker. So as I said, it's not better or worse because look, sometimes it's great to do that shortcut. Sometimes, oops, you're running a nuclear power plant, you did some shortcuts and you killed a bunch of people. That's not so good. So it's very specific to that. All right, the third one, so 6 for you again, 7 for me, is about quick start. That's how we deal with risk and uncertainty. So on the 10 end of the spectrum is somebody who really pushes for newness, for that uncertainty, for taking risks, experimenting. Somebody who's a 10 in quick start and initiating quick start will just kind of say, hey, let's try it. I had this great idea. Let's try it, see what happens. If it doesn't work, okay, we learned something, we'll move on. The other end of that, on the kind of the one side of quick start, is somebody who stabilizes, somebody who sees what's been working and sticks with it, kind of prevents chaos from happening in the first place, since I talked about chaos with a follow through. So again, that balance. The fourth number two's for both, well, no, two for you, three for me, sorry, is implementer. And it's not how we implement as in carry things out. So it's a little bit confusing for a name, but it's how we deal with space and tangibles. The word implementer comes from the use of tools and implements. So it's all about the tactile, tangible, three-dimensional world that we live in. So initiating implementers build, they physically put things together, they construct. If you ask an initiating implementer to describe something to you, they don't just use words, they show you. They will get the object and show you it in three dimensions, where they will put it together if they're, if they can. The other end of that spectrum is really imagining, envisioning. So it's not about the physical, tactile things that we do, but it's about kind of when you close your eyes and just imagine what could be there. That's the other end of that spectrum. So those are the four, and they're building blocks for, kind of whenever we take action, we apply the way we instinctively work.
That's fantastic. And that's why you're a visionary and I am a visionary too. Is that number three, and that number two is so low. Like for me, there is nothing worse that you can ask me to actually go and implement something. When I was a kid with my wife, we got married really early in life, and we were to go buy IKEA furniture. I could never put it together. I would be the one passing the tools to her, and she would be putting everything together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that's one where there's sometimes a gender bias where people think, oh, the guys are the ones who build and put together physical stuff. We have seen no correlation in any of the four action modes that I meant in terms of gender or age or race for that matter. So no, it's, don't expect the guy to be the one to put the IKEA furniture together, or, let alone build a bookcase from a bunch of wood that you bought at Home Depot.
Yeah, that's fascinating. For us, it has changed dramatically the way we do business. Can you talk about the tool that you guys built to do hiring? Again, like this podcast is to shine the light on entrepreneurs on how to run a better company. And sure, we were the place where our guests are, like your place, exceptional entrepreneur with a beautiful business model.
Yeah, so we developed a whole suite of software to basically take, start from the Colby A index and then apply it to different things. Because as I said, we're not just about knowing that strength. I mean, I think that's great. Don't get me wrong. It is the foundation, but it's really all about applying it. If you just kind of know that about yourself and you're like, okay, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't feel like I've changed the world the way I want to change the world. I want to empower people to do something. So most of our clients are businesses. So one of the things that's really key to businesses is, can we figure out who's the right person to put in an open role? Mm-hmm. And I was just having this discussion with somebody, because it can also seem kind of harsh, and they were kind of saying to me, so David, really what you're saying is you also keep people from getting jobs they might get. And we're like, okay, look, I guess I can't argue if there's one open position and there are 10 people who want it, and I say that 5 of those people aren't likely to be a good fit, and I'll talk about the software and how we do that in a second. Sure, those 5 people aren't going to get the job. Somebody's still going to get the job. I mean, I didn't prevent a person, somebody's going to get that job. It's still going to get filled. Just now it's going to be filled with somebody who, when they take that job, they're way more likely to be successful. Now, don't get me wrong. There's so much more that goes into being successful in a job than what we look at. So we could still say, yeah, good enough from our standpoint, but there are other factors. But let's just think about the people who didn't get the job, who, Colby prevented. Let's say they get the job. And let's say it's their first job, they're in a new career, and this is not a good job for them. It's not likely to fit. They're brilliant, they're committed, there are all kinds of great things about them, but this isn't the right job for them. They're going to be in it for 6 months. They might get fired because they're not such a great fit for the job. Well, is that doing them a favor? Their first job in their career, and now they have this, bad experience. Somebody fired them. That doesn't look good on the resume. They're down on themselves. So honestly, I think the people who don't get the job, we're doing them a favor. It doesn't seem like it's them at the time, but it's actually better long-term. But so how do we do it? We've developed software that has algorithms kind of embedded in them. We ask people for information about the role. So we build a profile of the job. What are the requirements basically along those 4 lines that I was talking about before: fact finder, follow through, quick start, implementer. What does the job demand? And then we build a range. And in each of those 4 modes, we say, okay, based on the information that the people who know the job gave us, here's what the job requires. Now let's compare candidates to that range. We have them take an A index. We, compare them and basically tell the company, here's what it looks like. And that's all done via software over the internet. Can be done in lots of different ways, but larger clients license it from us. They get a subscription and they can do as many of those ranges as they want. Other clients do them kind of one at a time as they need, because they're not as big, so they don't need to get a whole open subscription to it.
But I feel it's critical. Like for me, let's say you're finding a candidate for a job that requires building stuff or implementing stuff, and then you get a visionary into that job. What's going to happen? Full frustration, right. And you're never going to get high performance out of that person.
Yeah, and they may be great. They just aren't great at that job.
Exactly. Yeah, it's for me, it's an eye-opening. How do you compare Colby with other psychological profiles like DISC and Myers-Briggs and stuff like that?
So those 2 that you mentioned, and most of the time when people kind of throw other names in terms of personnel assessments or psychological assessments, they usually talk about stuff that measures our affect, our emotions, our preferences, values. So Myers-Briggs, for instance, is really all about what your preferences are. So extrovert versus introvert, it's where you like to go, what you like to do, and on the different things that they measure. So I don't consider those 2 and kind of all those other things that measure the affective or kind of sometimes called personality. I think it's really affect or emotional side of us. They measure different things, so they're not competition, because we measure this conative part of the mind, the doing part, not the feeling part of the mind. So I think they're complementary.
Fantastic. And I feel the same way too. I mean, for me, Colby was the first profile that really showed me where I should fit in my business and where can I add the most value, regardless of what I feel about. And it's important, because if we start talking about unique abilities, if you don't have the person with the right unique ability, the person is not going to perform as well as they should perform. So, yep. And let's face it, business is about the people that work in that business, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, and then we haven't talked. Those are kind of the 2 parts of the mind: the affect and the conative. And then there's the cognitive piece. The how smart you are. And there are other tests. The 2 that you mentioned were on the affective side, but the cognitive side, again, it's really important. You want to know that, but smart's not enough, as you know. Even like for me, there are times when I've felt I've been smart enough for some of the roles that I needed to fulfill, but I still wasn't a good fit for it. Yeah. And we all know smart people who, whether it's they lack the motivation, dedication, or they don't, kind of from the conative perspective, they don't attack problems in the way that the job requires them to happen. Again, this being smart's overrated. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. Generally speaking, I'd rather have smart people on my team, but that's not all I want.
That's so true. David, based on your experience, I know it's not easy developing yourself into a leadership position where you actually have the entire company on your shoulders. What advice would you give somebody that just entering a business, they know their track is to become the CEO or eventually the owner? What advice would you give them to actually grow themselves into that position?
Oh boy, let's see. I got to think about that one a little bit. So, I guess I'll give the advice from my experience. I think it's somewhat generalizable. So yes, I stepped into a family business, but one of the things that was important for me was so this is a little specific to family business, but it's broader than that. I'm glad that I didn't go straight from getting my college degree to working in the family business, because I think, there could be some skepticism from the people I lead of, well, is he really qualified? Is he really the best person to do this job? Or is it just because he's family? So I think it helped me a lot to do other things and to show that I was good at those other things, and other people who were not my family were judging me and, had good things to say. So I think the generalizable part of that, if it's not just a family business, I'd say for somebody earlier in their career, find positions that challenge you, where you can learn and grow from them. And, hopefully you can find people who will support you. I mentioned a couple of people in my life before who were mentors, my mom as my mom, but then also coming in the business, she was Kathy in that context, not mom, because professionally, we always kept it professional. But when you have people who will invest in you for whatever reason, that makes a huge difference. And if you have those goals, if it's, I want to be CEO of this company, it's going to be really hard to get there if you don't have supporters who are pulling you up and pushing you from behind and, for all different directions. And you can spot those people. Usually you're not going to be the only person they've ever helped in their career. Mm-hmm. So find people who have done it for others. Man, I wish I could attribute this to the right person because it's somebody famous and it's just escaping me now. But somebody's motto about this is, you're not truly a leader until you've developed a leader who's developed a leader. And I think that's so true. If you just think, well, I build a company and we make a lot of money, well, that's great. You're successful at making a lot of money, but I don't know if you're a leader unless you've developed people who also not just have the capacity, but have the mindset of bringing other people up. Because I truly believe we're not successful unless we include other people in that.
That's for sure. That's what a wonderful advice, David. Thank you so much for that. What was the major contribution that you have done in the business to take it where it is now? Because I know it's much bigger than what it was when you got on 20, 30 years ago.
I think it is. So a little bit of the background. So as I said, my mom started the company. She came up with the Colby A index. She came up a lot of the conceptual pieces of what we do. And even on the product side, a lot of what we originally did. I think my key role in it was understanding, how do we fit it all together in a way that makes sense economically? How do we communicate it in a way that is going to compel people to buy it from us? So she had done a lot of that. I don't want to say that, she was a very successful entrepreneur. It was her third business that she had started. The other two were also successful. But for this company, she was so focused on the concepts and the theories, and she loves that stuff. And she would develop the next one because it was exciting and interesting. And meanwhile, the stuff that was already there wasn't making money yet because it was still kind of in its growth phase. But she'd say, okay, but yeah, I want to do this new stuff. So what I helped figure out was, well, how do we put that into a process? Because look, if you don't continue to innovate, you're going to die as a business. So we needed that pushing innovation, new, but it had to be in the context of allowing the stuff that we're already doing to mature, make money, create profits to then build the development of the other stuff. And since our mission is to help as many people as we can understand themselves, a huge part of what we need to accomplish requires us getting bigger. It's not to make more money, but it's to have more reach. It's so that more people can have this freedom and the joy and the productivity of understanding who they are and achieving the things that they want to with less effort.
It's fascinating. I was just talking to somebody else before talking with you, and this person created a why system, why you do what you do. Simon Sinek started with Why, the book. So he collaborated with him for about 8 to 10 months to develop this software that tells you why you do what you do. And it's beautiful because when you realize that more is not about the money, it's not about yourself, it's about making this world a better place in whatever it is that you are excelling at. Then the money comes later, isn't it? And the growth is not for the money. Like being stable, material-wise in North America, it doesn't take that much. In North America, being okay, you can get there very fast. So it's not about the money anymore, right? It's not about the greed. It's about your God-given ability to add value to the world so that you can multiply that and make it even a bigger impact, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so many studies and kind of smart people and spiritual people throughout the years have made that same point. It's not new thinking. It's just, we have to be reminded of the same stuff over and over again because we lose sight of it sometimes.
Yeah, and then fulfillment, right? Is when you're so focused on just the material possessions, you lose your fulfillment. And then, for me, that's the biggest failure you can have in life is having a lot of money and being unfulfilled, your heart being empty, right?
Yep.
David, brother, thank you so much for your time. One last question, and I know we had some technical difficulties, but this is turning out to be amazing. Thank you for your patience. One last question before we end the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Wow. That's a tough one for me as an 8 in fact finder, because we are not known for our brevity and it's just a billboard, but I'll try. Well, we're all about understanding yourself. So I guess it'd have to start with, know yourself, mind, body, and spirit. And then that's, like I said, I can't make it too short. And then I'm going to say, fight to be who you're meant to be.
That's beautiful. And so profound. Most people go through life in the motion of living without stopping and realizing that they have a job to do, and it's understanding themselves and knowing that we are, mind, body, and spirit. Just like we're creating on God's image, which is the same, right? God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. Until you understand who you are, you can never be happy, fully happy, or have peace and joy.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
And for better or worse, I also think, look, we change. We aren't the same person at 50, 80 that we were at, 10 or 20. So you don't just decide who you are and kind of, okay, put a pin in it. And then it's a process, it's an evolution, but that's also a joy. I mean, I think it's a lifelong thing that you get to discover and work toward.
Beautiful. David, thank you so much. If people like to run the test on them and find you to better their companies, where can they find you?
It's pretty easy. It's Colby.com, but it's KOLBE.com.
Beautiful. David, thank you so much for being in the show. You're always welcome back. And thank you for making this world a better place.
It's great to be here, David. Adios.
Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.